Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of New Product Innovation. I'm Seif Abdelghani, Product Innovation Expert, Podcaster, and PDMA Egypt Chapter Leader. Welcome everyone to a new episode on New Product Innovation. Today I have a very special guest that I've worked with for over 2.5 years. Felipe Stoliar is the Product Portfolio Manager for Electrolux for Food Preservation Consumer Experience area. And today we're going to deep dive into a very good topic that everyone should be talking about in the next few years, which is the role of Product Portfolio Management in the innovation roadmap. Portfolio management is quite important, and today we're going to hear from Felipe how Electrolux and how he is actually seeing how that kind of portfolio management is working in the innovation roadmap. Felipe, welcome on the show.
Thank you, Safe. Thanks for the opportunity and for having me here.
So, Felipe, in your current role, you worked a lot in portfolio management with different colleagues, with different functions. So, before we deep dive into that, what does product portfolio management mean in product innovation?
So, Safe is a very interesting question, and portfolio management overall, I think it relates to owning, the let's say the product or the solution roadmap of whatever you produce. And it goes from defining the future roadmap to let's say allocating resource, both capital and people, in the best way, driving innovation in the future, and then basically also managing the business agenda of the category of the product specifically. So it's a kind of a 360 work, I would say, that you need to be in contact with different functions of the company, and making sure that you all also collaborate, and let's say learn a lot from consumers, and actively engage with consumer feedback, making sure that you put future innovations that really resonate with users. So it's a bit of it's a bit of it.
That's actually quite interesting, Felipe. So when we look at the product management role, right, it's quite a balance between how you do the strategy part, because the product manager needs to set the strategy for the long term, but as well in these current conditions where demands are dropping everywhere and people are looking at short term as well. How do you find that kind of balance? How can a product manager or a product portfolio manager actually try to find the balance between the short term and the long term?
Yeah, I think it's always a bit depending on the market conditions and the industry that you are. For example, Electrolux is an industry that is very sensitive, right, to macroeconomic conditions. We're talking about products that people they buy that you put in your home, right? So depending a lot on the economic cycle that you are, things can change, and priorities they can change. But I think it's very important that you always keep a focus on your long term. Where you want to go. Really having a clear end goal, or what we like to call like as a north star, so you know exactly where you're going, and then and making the plan with some sort of flexibility that if something changes in the market, you can adjust your plan. And basically what we're seeing today is that the long term is becoming much midterm, because things are changing in a faster pace. So you always need to balance between short term and, I would say, midterm, in a way that the plans are becoming, you need to build a plan that is not super, let's say, unflexible, right? That you can change and adjust in a way. And of course, you need to have a good balance of capital and resource allocation. So making sure that if something goes bad, you have like a good, you have another alternative. So you don't put all of the eggs in the same basket, in terms of how you invest your resource. So it's a bit, it's all about balance, I would say. Safe.
That's quite interesting. So, if we are moving actually from this point that you need to have a balance, right? So, what would you say would be the benefits of using product portfolio management as you described it in the short term and the midterm and the long term inside product innovation? And let's start together with the short term first.
Yes, I think short term is, you need to deliver the short term. You need to be focused, right? And you need to really know where to prioritize. And I think using product portfolio is really, it helps to drive prioritization. It helps to drive the teams actually in a single direction, and to allocate resource in the best, in the most efficient way, because short term really requires focus and speed. um, so this is, I would say that the most, let's say, benefit of having a good portfolio management is really to prioritize and put focus on where it matters.
That's actually quite good. So, if you're looking for the short term specifically, right, I think the problem that we always see is that companies try to prioritize the long term, right, because this is where the growth is going to come from in the next period. But when you're looking at the short term and also when you're looking at a global scale, so global companies, things can get quite difficult between demands in different regions, right? Because again, consumers will have similar habits, but at the end of the day, you can have same consumer in different regions requesting the same thing. How do you manage that from a product portfolio part? So managing the resources aspect, can we deep dive together into that part?
Yes, absolutely, safe, and it's a topic that I personally like a lot. So I think it's all about how do you find the commonalities, especially if you have a global portfolio. We can, every of course every industry is different, but I think most of the industries, they do not allow you to be super different across countries or across regions. So you need really to look for the commonalities, and how you drive most of the communalities into the different countries. So it's having a very strong strategy of where you want to go. What are the key areas, or let's say the key benefits that you want to deliver, or we can say about what are the key pain points that you want to solve for the user, and then trying to find a modular approach, trying to find commonalities across different regions. I would say that we tend to think, right, Safe, that we're very different if you go to North America, or if you go to Asia Pacific, or if you go to Latin America, Europe. But I think that we get a lot of surprise, because I think we are more similar than we think, and there are a lot of common threads. So I think, to your point, is really focus on the commonalities rather than the differences, and how and drive synergy from that. Yeah.
That's quite good. So, if you're looking now at the midterm and the long term, and in some cases you find across different industries that companies struggle a bit to see, okay, do we put more resources in the midterm or do we focus more on the long term where we want to have more and bigger innovations? Because a midterm you'd look at 3 to 5 years, when the long term is 5 years and beyond, and it becomes quite difficult with new technologies as well. So, if we're looking specifically on the mid and the long term, how would you find that balance?
I think, safe. I like to use this word of migration, right? That you sometimes you have like let's say a future a vision that sometimes you don't know even how to get there, because you don't have the technology and so on. But you need to design the steps, right? You need to have small steps. Sometimes are incremental steps that you have advance a bit towards that direction, right? So, and every step that you take, you learn something, because you iterate, and of course technology develops and so on. So I think the point to having this mid and long term is, you have an end goal, but you need to break it down to more objective steps that goes to that direction, and then of course the technology will follow. Of course there are some innovations that are, as you see in the market, right, that are some more disruptive, So you always need to be careful with to really consider what are the risks that we are seeing if the market suddenly changes, and so you need to adapt and be attentive to it. But I think the most I think what I like to really work is create these steps towards the future vision. And this is not easy to do because there is a lot of uncertainties, but it's really like starting step by step, and then you learn a lot from that.
That's quite good. So at the end of the day, as you said, right, it's more about having that kind of sustainable competitive advantage at the end of the day. Everything feeds up in the long term, whether you do it in the short or the midterm as well. So, Felipe, if we're looking now at product portfolio, right, so there are always lots of key important pillars, right? But if we're trying to narrow it down to three key important pillars when you're planning a product portfolio roadmap with new innovations, which ones would you actually find as the top three priorities?
Yeah, it's a good question, Safe. I think it all starts with your, let's say, brand identity, right? What do you stand for as a brand, right? What do we want to go? What do we want to be recognized for? I think this is one important pillar that you always need to have in mind, and this, I think, sets up the vision, right? The direction. I think the second pillar is really to be close to consumers or to users. So develop like a process that you have close feedback loops, always constantly, iterating and testing and and understanding consumer behavior. I think this is something that it's I would say a critical point is to not you know to really be close to end users and understanding, asking them, and of course understanding behavior shifts. For example, what happens with different generations, what is coming in the next years, what are the external, let's say, factors that are affecting how people engage with your product, how people use your product. So this, I think, is a very important pillar. And I think the third one will be having a clear and focused roadmap, and know where you put your resource. So really working closely to both, R&D teams, design, manufacturing, to really be allocate capital, in a most effective way, because this also drives, efficiency. So I think I would say these three are the three key important pillars on the topic. Yeah.
That's quite good. So, for summarizing, being loyal to your brand identity, the consumer behavior, and becoming more close to your consumers, working more closely with your internal stakeholders. And as you mentioned before, right, at the end of the day, all these don't matter if you're not putting the right priorities on your resources and trying to push in the boundary more or less. That's quite good.
Exactly. And sometimes if it requires saying more no than yes, which is depending on the period, you really need to streamline and then be even more focused. So I think is yeah, this third point is super important. Yeah.
That's quite good. So, if we're looking now at product portfolio management, and we know that this has been quite long in lots of industries, but we see lots of organizations actually failing in doing product portfolio management correctly, and you find investments going into projects that either never launches or projects that do a disaster when they launch rather than being not launched at all. So, if we're trying to put few key points, what would be the mistakes that organizations make when doing product portfolio management? Which ones would you find as the top ones?
I think let's say one will be uh, wrong prioritization of consumer needs, like relying, for example, too much on some assumptions that are not validated, and to my previous point, not having like this quick feedback loop. So trying to solve, for example, a problem that does not exist. I think this is one mistake that is one of the important points that we need to be cautious. The second one, I think, is not being able to anticipate trends. What is coming. So always having a strong foresight. I think is very important. Sometimes we it's difficult, of course, to let's say be right on what is happening, but you can draw some hypotheses, right, of some different scenarios of what is coming. So I think not being able to anticipate something, and it's very risky because you're always in delay with versus your competition. um, I would say the third point is really being as a bit what we discussed in the beginning. Being build a very unflexible plan. So putting, for example, every all of the resource in one basket, so that your plan becomes, if something suddenly changes in the market, you cannot really reallocate, or you cannot reprioritize. So build a plan that is very inflexible. I think this is also a common mistake. So, and the last point I think is sometimes you overcommit resource without proper evaluation. So you put a lot of focus on one specific project without having a proper front loading process. So it's very important to focus really sometimes on front loading, on discovering what we really want to get out of this project before committing a resource. So I think this is a bit of a summary that I would do of the common mistakes.
Yeah, and actually, to I think it's quite interesting and insightful as well, the points you have mentioned, and I think you also mentioned a great point at the beginning that there are always similarities, right? So if you're not actually leveraging this kind of similarities, you'll end up doing things all over again and wasting this kind of resources. So I think it summarizes perfectly all the major pitfalls that a company would fall into. So finding talent has been quite a challenge across different industries, and as they say always, right, you spend lots of time to find the right talent, because if you hire someone who is not the right one for this job, it can cost you more than waiting for the right person. So what would be the key talents that should be existing in people managing product portfolio management? And you've been doing this for almost 2.5 years now, so I would love to hear from your side. What are the things you believe would be insightful for others to understand that it has to be in the person managing a portfolio?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, Safe, and I think the ability to have a strategic mindset, I think, is very important. Always be able to see the big picture. Sometimes we agendas are very busy, and we're dragged into a lot of complex amount of data and discussions. But it's always being able to see the big picture is very important, and be able to deal with all of the pressure of from the market, from the commercial agenda, and being able to balance that without losing the big picture is very important. I think one, as I said at the beginning, a portfolio management role is very 360. So you should be able to collaborate in a diverse team, I would say multidisciplinary team, that people, they will have different backgrounds. You have, for example, design, marketing, R&D, manufacturing, and so on. And people, they have different points of view. So being able to really navigate and extract the best from different points of view, I think this is a very important point. And connected to that is really how do you communicate? So effective communication on the priorities, on the trade-offs, ability to really synthesize in a simple way different sets of opportunities and insights. So how do you communicate? I think is something very very important. And I would say last point is a bit connected to what we discussed, is really ability to truly understand consumer behavior and motivation. So really push the boundaries with the team, but being grounded into strong consumer understanding. So I think this is, I would say, the the key skills, or let's say abilities, or something that you develop to be a successful product portfolio manager.
That's quite interesting, Felipe, because at the end of the day, when you start looking at it, right, Managing a portfolio can happen in so many different ways, right? You can manage a portfolio of products on the inside the same country, inside the same product line, or you can even manage a product portfolio on a global scale. So, if we're looking, of course, at the most difficult part, managing that aspect on a global scale, we have different regions, different requirements, different consumers, and even with the, I would say, alignment of different needs as well, there will be still some aspects that every region would request. So, as a product portfolio manager, how would you be able to consolidate on a global scale in a multinational company operating under different brands and different regions as well?
Yeah, and this is very interesting, Safe. I would say that it all starts with trying to establish, let's say, a standardized framework. So the same way of seeing things, right? That uh, you try to commonize as you can the different processes, the tools that you have, the metrics for portfolio management across all of the regions. I think this is a first, starting. Let's say this is a starting point, and it's not easy to have, but it's something you need to look for. I think then once you have like a good, process in place and common tools, you need to foster collaboration, right? You need to develop trust between the different teams in the regions. You need to make people working together, knowing each other, and getting to know each other, trusting each other. Of course, we always have good discussions and so on, but really I think building the trust and collaboration into the different teams across the different regions, I think is very important. And so the team, they also they are willing to share best practice, something sometimes that you do in one region that you can apply in the other region. We have a lot of good talents spread, so I think trust to share what is what is used across. I think also this balance of this hybrid organization, when you have like people working in the different regions, you always need to work together between central teams and regional teams. So I think having a common agenda is very important. So everybody goes into the same direction, and all of the topics, or most of the topics, are discussed in a core team. So I think this is very important. And I think working a bit to my first point is, how do you adopt new technologies? We are seeing a lot of now the big trend in AI accelerating. So how do you use and adapt, use technologies to track movements globally, so you can have a more standardized data set point, a standardized report. So leverage a bit technology to really consolidate information in an efficient way. Um, yeah.
That's quite good, Felipe. Thanks a lot for sharing that part. So we're reaching almost the end of our podcast here. But if I wanted to ask you for just a simple quote regarding product portfolio management, something that you learned, was aspired, you were motivated by, that describes something inside product portfolio management for people who actually are aspiring to become a product portfolio manager or wants to go into that field, what would you say?
I think if you want to really be close to the decision making, and also be in a position that you really can impact both the business and the people around you, I think portfolio management is the right role to, or a right uh, job to do. Um, and always have in mind continuous improvement. I think we are always improving. The market and the pace is fast, so you always need to strive for, you do a bit day by day, and you always have a strong, let's say, mindset of always improving. So I think this is something very that I take with me a lot on everything that I do personally.
Thanks a lot, Felipe. Thanks a lot. That was very, very insightful. So we're approaching the end of our podcast. Thanks a lot, Felipe, for joining us today, and for the people listening to us on different podcast streams. This was Product Innovation, a new product innovation podcast. We had Felipe Stoliar, the product portfolio manager for Electrolux for the consumer experience area of food preservation. And see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Seif.
Hi everyone! If you like the episode and would like to follow up on the next episodes, please subscribe on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or Spotify, or in any other application you're following up the podcast on. And if you like the episode, please share it. This was Seif Abdelghani, Product Innovation Expert, podcaster, and PDMA Egypt Chapter Leader.